Everyone, welcome to the MOBB Mentality Podcast. Today we're going to talk all about women's health, hormones, sexual wellness, and just overall healthy lifestyle. We are joined with Dr. Michelle Harden and Katie Clayton. Dr. Harden is a board certified obesity physician, and then Katie is a certified nutritionist. So this is going to be a really exciting topic, and we are just going to go all deep in habits and lifestyle. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Sasha. We really appreciate what you do for women and empowering them with your message. We need to hear it.
Well, we are excited to hear all about what you have to offer today. First off, let's just dive straight in and tell us about the book that y'all wrote together, and then how we got to be here today, like how you met, how you came together and developed the practice that you have.
Okay, so we wrote the book to Finding Healthy. Katie did most of the writing of the book, and I provided the science behind it. But we created this, the book to Finding Healthy was really based on the fact that over the last 15 years, we found that one of the most impactful and powerful medicines is lifestyle. And yet it is truly underutilized. So I'm a board certified OBGYN, obesity medicine specialist that really was trained in conventional medicine. And then probably about 20 years ago, even before functional medicine was in vogue, I found that really what we needed to do as physicians is really listen to women, hear their story. In conventional medicine, and that's kind of why I've moved away from, the regular office visit is a 15 to 20-minute visit. You can't hear women. You can't help them other than prescribing medication. So it's very easy to prescribe an anti-anxiety medication, an antidepressant, but really to get to the root of the problem takes time. And so that was where I found that lifestyle is many times more powerful than conventional medicine. Now, I truly believe in conventional medicine. There is a path for the two to come together when needed, but we found that lifestyle takes time to educate, to hear everyone's story, and our bodies know how to heal, but it takes the wisdom of understanding the impact of the power of lifestyle. So 20 years ago, we started down that road. And then Katie brings a breath of, the power of food. Food is a messenger. It creates signals in our body that can set off that chronic disease. And getting to moms where they really are
Right.
the forefront of the family, right? They tend to put the food on the table. They're just the powerhouse of that house. So we thought we're not going to be able to reach the whole world until we got to our book. Okay. But in the beginning, if we just one woman at a time will impact that family, healthier children for a healthier society. So
Yes.
that was kind of, my story. And then when I was about 35, a much younger version of my doctor self, I was a mother, I was a physician, and my mom had a massive stroke. And I became a caregiver at the age of 34. And so it really and she, she was a mother and had 8 children, was a homemaker, and gave her whole life for her kids. And then at the age of 61, became disabled, where she was unable to care for herself, unable to talk, but still had her mind, and learned so much from that. So from that point, that began the beginning of my journey also to realize that, look, heart disease, it's the #1 killer in women. And again, the power of lifestyle for each woman to kind of take care of her health, because without your health, so much, your health is your greatest wealth. I don't know who said that, but it is really the truth. So
I believe that.
That's our story. And
So what she brings to light is a powerful point. Her mother was a caretaker. Then she becomes a caretaker. And
At a young
81
age.
Yes, and 81% of caretakers are females. And when you compare females to males, women do 50% more caregiving than men.
Mhm.
And so somewhere we extend this compassion to everyone around us, but we put ourselves at the bottom of the barrel, right? We think
Yep.
that somewhere like we lost the message that self-care is not selfish. And we feel like if we can help women to prioritize their health, we will change the whole world. Because when mom starts taking care of herself, people know this. They're like, what's going on with mom? Women drag the men in, they drag their teenagers into our office. And we just want to tell them, if you can just focus on yourself and make those changes, everybody else will follow suit.
Yes.
So that's really our goal.
I love that message that is like, initially women feel like we have to have that support. It's like, you have to have that support from your kids or for your husband. And no, you don't. I mean,
Right.
you can start with yourself, and it's like,
Yeah.
actions speak louder than anything, and like they will follow, and they may not follow today. It may be 3 months from now, 6 months from now. But when mom is healthier, happier, it's like the whole family is, and then they want to get on board. I do believe that.
Yeah.
And it's really true, because really the only thing you can control, okay, I think when you realize that you have no control, and that the only thing you can control is yourself and the way you respond to life, and that when you prioritize your health and the top 5 things in your life, and you're consistent with that. So to find you're healthy every day, it doesn't take a lot of energy. Okay. Our bodies are complex, yet we have simple needs. So we need movement, we need water, we need real food, we need downtime, and we need people, we need community. And when you keep it simple like that, and you're consistent in that mindset, I think you can have a healthier, more joyful life, with hopefully 20, 30, 40 years down the road, a lot less medications than the majority. The average person at the age of 50, or let's say even now 40, that comes into the office may be on 4 or 5 medications for sleep, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, diabetes. So, controlling your metabolic environment starts as children. Okay. So as a child.
Yeah. And I think part of our downfall is really thinking that this is something that's going to take a lot of time. I need to go radical. I need to eat a plant-based diet. I need to get a trainer. I need to be depriving myself and suffering in some way to see results. And really, if you can just do small daily actions that are consistent, 30 minutes of movement every day. So, sometimes I exercise and my kids are on top of me or next to me, or someone has peed their pants, but nobody's going to die. It's 30 minutes. No one is going to die. Well, hopefully, right? That's cool. So, but yeah, it doesn't take a lot of time. It takes consistency. And I love what James Clear says. He says that if you're not seeing the results that you like, the results that you want, it's not a downfall to yourself. You have to evaluate the system that you have in place. And so if you're not seeing the results, evaluate your system. If you're not getting what you want, move things around. But the key is daily consistent action.
You ladies are speaking my languages over here. I'm like, between my coaching brain and my counseling brain, like, we're exactly on the same page, because I really do believe that change is made through really small daily habits and in small increments of time. I literally just gave a live yesterday on talking about just 18 minutes at a time in these core areas that we're discussing. And Dr. Michelle, you said some really like big words. It's like cholesterol and diabetes and high blood pressure. And it is so common now at, I feel like, younger and younger ages. I mean, even kids, which is really shocking to me.
Right.
So what are some of these lifestyle, like from nutrition, from just even a medical standpoint of like, what do we need to have in place in order to control that environment to get off these medications?
Well, I think, one of the statements I said is it really does start in childhood. So if you, and that comes again, parents are in control of what their children eat. And our society is a quick, convenient society. So unfortunately, some statistics show that 1 out of 3 children, especially in our area of South Texas, may have adult onset diabetes. Okay. So
Wow.
children. So what can we do? Well, I think we have to kind of look at how we utilize food for comfort, how we utilize food for reward. So in the schools, I mean, that's, in the schools as a treat, let's have donuts, let's have Skittles instead of, let's talk about vegetables. Let's talk about, what do we get from an apple, and having options for children. So I've seen this and talked to moms who try to raise their children without sugar and processed food, and yet a young child at the age of 5 is faced with looking at all these beautiful colored Skittles and like, I've never had that. I mean, but that's where it really starts. So changing the mentality that, fruits and vegetables, they're good. And it's not just carrots and celery, right? So
Yes.
it's maintaining and starting a healthy environment as a child, and as adults realizing that, I don't want to name any fast food places, so I won't, but that fast food is not really food. Again, messengers, food as a messenger that leads to inflammation, that leads to disease. And we have to connect the two of those, because many times we don't. We just think, well, food is food. It tastes good. It's giving me, some quick energy, but it's causing long-term damage. So I think, you just have to get back to the basics in the family of sitting. Well, and it's hard to kind of like sit down and eat, but you can still eat healthy on the run.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's important to note that this is the first generation. We're now seeing the first generation of children that are expected to not outlive their parents. And
Wow.
so
Yep.
food is emotive. We use it's, Taco Tuesday, or if it's game night, it's pizza and wings. If it's a celebration, let's go out and have a steak, right? I mean, we use food to celebrate. And so we have to incorporate that in a healthy way and make food fun. And I just remember my oldest, she's 12 now, but I was a new mom, trying to get her to eat like those little baby bell peppers with hummus. I'm like, just try it, kid. They're so good. I promise. So I realized one day I would put her down for a nap, and then I would sit to myself and have something nutritious. And I realized one day that didn't work out. She saw me eating it. Then she picked it up and started eating it. And I was like, oh my gosh, all this time, I should have just been eating it in front of her. So she sees what mom does, because they replicate us, what we do. So if we can get out there as a family and, drag the kids along, tie them down in the stroller if you have to, bring their scooters, whatever you have to do, because you're giving them a tool for their future that teaches them that movement is medicine. If mom had a bad day and she comes home and goes for a walk, that's therapy. And so they're going to replicate that at some point, right? So I think we have to really give more power to what we model to them, instead of trying to, too, I hear moms say, I have a really hard time sticking to my plan because I keep eating what my kids are eating. And I'm like, why are they eating that? You at this moment, we have such a powerful platform to provide the food. Once they're older, they can go off and make their own decisions. But while they're in our home under our care, if you can put those blueberries and those at height when they open the fridge, that's what they're going to grab. That's whatever's easiest, right? If you can serve a platter of veggies before dinner when they're hungry and starving, they're more likely to eat those and then eat their dinner as well. So vegetables are very low calorie, nutrient dense, and what we eat, our food speaks, as she said, speaks to our genetics. So if you think of your genes like a piano, how those genes are expressed are based on our lifestyle choices. Do we move or not? Do we eat plants or not? Do we smoke or not? Do we live a high stress lifestyle or not? So when we can eat more veggies, when we can manage our reaction to our stressors, take time out, we are actually changing the expression of our genes, which is so powerful. Food is information. And last thing I'll say on this is, we used to think that we would eat the food, we have to digest the food, it has to go through the intestinal barrier, and we have to transport it around the body to be able to receive the nutrients from that. But now what we know is, when that food enters your mouth, your brain is receiving that information. Do I put out is receiving information? Do I put out inflammation, or do I stop the disease process? So what we eat is more than just a calorie. It's information.
And that kind of goes back to what you were asking with the question with the diabetes and the high blood pressure. And all of it really starts with food. Food is really the basis, because what goes in our mouth has an effect on our brain, right? So embryologically, the gut and the brain, right? Brain goes up, gut goes down. So really what we're feeding our children, what we're feeding ourselves is going to have an impact not only on the disease processes that we talked about, but our power of our thought, the power of the thought to move or to sit on the couch, the power to, when I'm stressed, to go for a walk, pray, meditate, or go for a glass of wine or something that is not going to be conducive to good health. So there's so much in just what we have at the tip of our fingers, at the tip of our fork, that can play a significant role in everything.
And I think too, when you take into consideration the many different roles that women play, right? We're going through a lot. We might be grieving. We might be dealing with some personal things that we can't really give our health 100% of the attention that it needs. So for those women, I would encourage them to really start and do with what can you do? What can you do for today? Maybe that's just put on your exercise shoes. Maybe that's it. Maybe you go sit outside. But when you consistently do what you can do, then you can start to think about what's possible for you. So I put on my exercise shoes. Tomorrow I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to walk. When you do that every day, you can start to go a little bit faster or a little bit longer. And then if you do that consistently enough, you begin to fathom what was once impossible. So
I love that, the starting small, and then even with it's like, okay, what I can do, but also that shift. And it's like, okay, what can I stop doing that isn't helping me?
Right.
And it's like, we are engaged in so many behaviors on a day-to-day basis, from our responses to our actual actions, that if we just stop doing one thing, like saying one negative thought to ourselves, stop eating our kids' Cheez-Its, like just that one little thing can make a huge difference on moving you in a healthier direction.
Yeah.
Right. And Sasha, you said something about if we, our thoughts, right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. It's so true that what we think is going to determine the outcome of our life. But, in times of stress or all the different things a woman can go through, it's like Katie said, it's not finding your perfect, but our society is so fast paced, and to be busy is to be really cool and to be successful. And, that busyness many times leads to something that is counterproductive and leads women down a road of shame and guilt and not being the best mom that they can be. And I think a lot of that starts again from the power of the thought. So the healthier in times of stress or in difficult times, just remembering to try to put whatever good food and water is really huge too, into our bodies during difficult times, can help us to think clearer. And studies show that by living from the attitude of looking for the good, even in the adversity, and keeping a gratitude journal, just writing down 3 things you're grateful for daily. And sometimes, when people are really depressed, they can't find 3 things that they're grateful for, even though someone from the outside can see that. But our brain is wired in a way, if we just write down, this was actually studied. They took 2 groups of women who were depressed, both on medication. One group wrote down 3 things they were grateful for. The other group did not. And within 60 days, there was a 30% improvement in the overall quality of life just by writing down 3 things you're grateful for. So when you write it down, and you can't type it in, you've got to actually write it out. Can't just think it, got to write it out. It goes to what's called the reticular activating system, and your brain just changes. So just as you said, changing how you think and just looking for the good, as difficult as it may be in everything, writing down 3 things you're grateful for can change the outcome of one's life.
A gratitude practice is so simple, but it is totally life-changing. I do believe then it begins to help you catch other areas of your life. Like, I mean, funniest thing yesterday, it's like, well, my kid made a mess everywhere from those, nice little squeezy balls that are filled with stuff that he decided he was gonna, how would this feel if I bit it open? And I ended up with a mess everywhere. And I was like, oh, this is like, great. I do not have time to clean this up. But it was automatically like that shift of, I needed to vacuum. And this is just like the perfect excuse to be able to be like, all right, I needed a vacuum. Now I have to get the vacuum in anyway. Let's just do it. But instead of staying in a situation and let it stress you out, be mad and upset, be like, okay, great. One more thing to have to deal with. It's like, needed a vacuum anyway. Like, let's knock it out and move on.
Yeah. But the more you practice any behavior, the easier it becomes. And so if you think about those neural pathways, at first, that first time you take up that action, it's like driving down a gravel road, right? But the more you do it, you start to build a highway, and that becomes the path of least resistance. So at some point, it becomes easier to exercise than it does to skip that workout. It becomes easier just to go grocery shopping than to sit there and contemplate, should I go? Should I go? Should I go? Yeah. So that's the power of consistency.
I love that.
It becomes easier to vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Rather than to get upset and to realize, oh, I love the exploring mind of that young boy biting into the whoosh, right? That takes practice. That takes practice.
All the time. And so even speaking to like these kids, so my son is autistic. He's almost 4. And there's a lot of, this is kind of, I guess, going to be like a hard topic, but there's a lot of, controversy. And it's like, okay, there's safe foods for children that have autism. And it's like, and he does have his staples, but I run into a lot of autistic children do not eat a lot of vegetables, so they don't eat a lot of fruits. And this boy could literally be a fruitarian. Like, he loves fruit, but from a very young age, we did not give him a lot of snacks, a lot of like sugar packaged things. We're like, this is the fruit that you get. Like, this is what we're eating. And still to this day, he loves it. And I feel like we really did prevent ourselves from having to deal with a really big challenge from a very young age.
Absolutely.
Because food, if you can think about it, I tell this to people all the time. There is a scientist sitting in a lab somewhere, and a team of them rather, saying, how can I make this food have the perfect amount of fat, sugar, and sodium so that it is chemically addictive? And once you have that food, you don't want anything else. There's this little baby yogurt. It's got this chubby little baby on it. It's more expensive than the regular yogurt. And it's organic, and you think you're doing the best thing for your kid because it's made for children. But if you read the ingredients, like, it's extrapolated out really long. It's all sugar, right? Sugar. And so once your kid has that, they don't want to eat the plain unsweetened stuff that has strawberries and bananas on it. They just don't, because they've had that hit of dopamine with that other. So that's, you're so right by saying I'm going to start out, because once they're older and you have to make that transition, there's a lot of resistance that you're dealing with. But moms give up too quickly. We do. We go, oh, my kid doesn't like carrots. Keep the carrots out of everything or they won't eat it. But if they've shown that it's up to 22 times of reintroducing that food where we begin to change, our taste buds change. So it's that, if they don't like it boiled, try roasting it, try pureeing it, try sticking it in a smoothie, because that's all giving them different ways to experience that.
That's my trick. Smoothies are my trick.
Smoothies are life-giving.
Yeah. I'm like, I throw it in. I'm like, this smoothie has everything that he needs. I'm like, we do it every morning, and it's like, it is a staple. But that's a good reminder even for adults. It's like, give yourself 22 times. Like, have you tried this 22 times? And if you reach that 23rd time and you're like, no, I absolutely hate it, fine. But I believe we give ourselves the opportunity to actually get there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think our brains kind of stop us, right? Our brains stop it. Well, it's too much trouble to put together a smoothie. It's too much trouble to go to the grocery store to get all this stuff. But really, if you change your perspective and you go to your why and you prioritize your health and the top 5 things that you're going to do, you realize, well, look, what's in my refrigerator? Okay, I'm going to put this carrot, I'm going to put a little bit of chard in, I'm going to put my spinach, my blueberries, my almond milk, my protein powder. And before you know it, you've got this great breakfast. So again, it goes back to the perspective on how we're going to think, which automatically goes back to your why and your purpose.
What are some of the biggest things that are causing like inflammation in our gut and that are bringing a lot of brain fog? Like those are two things I feel like we just hear so much about that. Like, how do we get rid of it? So what are some really things we can do from a overall holistic standpoint?
I'm going to start and say that 90% of all visits to a physician are stress related. So I really believe that it is our stress as a society that affects, it's like the downpour, right? If I'm highly stressed, how am I going to think clearly to get out and move? How am I going to go grocery shopping if I've got all of these things to deal with? It's the least of my priorities. So I think what she said earlier is, yeah, if you've got more than 5 priorities, you have no priorities. And so I think it's really powerful to realize that I can be a good person and a kind person and still say no. And when we begin to create that space around us, we can think clearer. And so the other thing is this fog, right? You get this fog over your brain where you can't really see the world bathed in a light of sunshine, right? So if you can get out and you can move for just 7 minutes, after 7 minutes, you're creating this brain fertilizer to where you feel good. You've got this rush of dopamine. Once you can get yourself moving, you feel better. So you want to eat better. And it's this cycle of just self-care. So that's important.
Yeah, I think what she says from the stress component is really true. Stress is it's kind of like, that fight or flight. So when you're in a busy work environment or you're at home and you're in that stress mode, right? You can forget about food for 10 hours because you don't have time to think. You're just going from one activity to the other. And that cortisol is protective and you want it for that short when you really are fighting for your life, but you don't want it all day long. So we see a lot of this probably in women from the age of, we see it all ages, but after the woman has her first baby or you've, finished graduate school or whatever it is, a real stressful time. I hear women during that time period, well, I've got this brain fog. I just can't think clear. I'm gaining weight and it's just, I can't sleep. I feel depressed. I'm anxious. And I think, again, it all goes back to how we're living our life at the pace we are. And the hormone that is really the most, disease provoking is really cortisol. And that cortisol is going to depend upon how you think, how you move, and what you eat. So I think brain fog is really due to the cortisol that has the downfall of everything else.
And think about it. When you go a whole day and you're just so busy putting out fires that you're surviving off of like a power bar and an unsweetened iced tea or whatever it is, you've got no nutrients. Your brain isn't thinking. Your messengers in your brain, your neurotransmitters are made up of the food in our diet. We are constantly building up and breaking down our body, our bones, our muscles, the collagen in our skin, the cells of our organs. And those are being rebuilt out of the foods in our diet. So if we're eating garbage, we're literally building ourselves up out of garbage. And there's only so long that we can operate like that optimally. At some point, it's like this gradual downfall.
Yeah. And the younger you are, so a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, 35-year-old, maybe even a 40-year-old, right? You can get by because your cells are much younger. So we have to remember the human body is really a collection of cells, right? And those cells require, like she said, nutrients. And that inflammation that's coming from the type of society we live in. If you look at the blue zone, okay, so the blue zone is an area where people live longer. They have their health spans match their lifespans. What do? They eat a variety of food. They eat in season. They have their community. They clean their own house. They garden. They're in nature. right? They don't
Yeah.
eat processed food, move up 100 miles an hour, social. I mean, I believe there's a lot of good that comes from social media and the internet. I mean, look at what you're doing right now, educating people. But there comes a point in time that the people that are living in the community, in the blue zones, they're very mindful of how they're living. They're not living at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. That just speaks so much truth, because like we move constantly, and it's almost this like belief that if we're not performing at this like peak level, then we're just not good enough, and then we just push ourselves to move even faster. And I think it's especially true for high achieving women. It's like, we got to do the best at work, we got to do the best at home, we got to do the best for our kids, we got to be the best spouse. And like, where's time to stop and to breathe and actually
Right.
appreciate your work environment, your
Yeah.
family, your kids, and to
Yeah.
slow down.
Right.
Dr. Harden had a patient, and she was trying to get her to move and to eat better. And she's like, but I can't. I'm so important. I've got so many things to do. And she said to her, well, how valuable are you going to be if you're dead?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, you're right. You know,
Yeah.
we deal with all these things, and we're sacrificing for what? I mean, for our jobs, we're going to be replaced by the younger generation who's coming in for less pay. Our spouses may die. Our children grow up and move out of the home. And what are we left with? We're left with this body, this one body that we've been given from birth to the grave, and we have to take care of it.
And I think, even when God created the world, right? 6 days and then 1 day of rest. Okay. So we really don't take what you said. It's, if you're not busy, you're not successful. You're not doing everything that you could do, but that's not true, because our bodies need time to just be. So really, to kind of take a day as a family, as an individual, where you really do nothing, that is so healthy. And you will find that you will have more energy the 6 days to follow, whatever day that day may be, to do nothing. And people who are always going, I know when I first started to do that, I'm like, ugh, I don't know. I've got so many things to do. I just can't just be. But wow, it was one of the best things that I ever did.
But it really is a toxic mentality, and we wear this busyness like a badge of honor. And just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive. And, I think it was Gandhi who said, I have so much to do today that now I must meditate for 2 hours instead of 1. And that,
that's the truth.
Reminds me that it's okay to slow down, because I take a 20-minute nap or I take a walk for myself. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to get off of this couch and like kill it. Time out will set us forward.
I made a to-do list today, and it's like my part of my organization and my self-care is like, okay, I plan every night what's going to come the next day. And that Post-it does not have enough room on it for all the things that I want to accomplish. But I was like, all right, like we hit some core areas, and even literally reminding myself and looking at it today, it's like, the goal is to get done these things. And once these things are done, like, let's enjoy the kids. Let's get in, a little bit longer of a workout if I have time for it, like doing some of those extra things. So it's like, what are the wins? Let's celebrate them, acknowledge it. And instead of packing more things on the list when you actually accomplish them, like, hey, now it's the time to take a step back. Like, you did what you set out to do, and that's great.
Right. And I think when you bring up that list, and one of the topics that you and I, just because I know that sexuality and sexual wellness, I'm going to throw this in there because this is like the perfect segment. Because I always tell people, women say, well, I just don't have any desire. I just don't have any desire to have sex. And, it's not like, and that normally, once you have your first child, everything changes, right? Because it's lack of sleep. And how many to-do lists do women put on there? Have sex with my partner, right?
It never makes the list.
It's right. Okay. So the whole point, I think, is that as women, and if you look at our society now, everything is about, testosterone. We have testosterone clinics on every corner. But if you look at how men and women are wired, they're wired differently. So women really need to be kind of romanced throughout the day. If they had their choice between sleep and sex, they would choose sleep first. Men would choose sex and then sleep. So understanding that you have to prioritize that time, and that sex is really something different than what you see in the movies. I mean, if you're with a partner for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, okay, it's going to be very different after 10 years than it was, when you first met your partner. So it's really remembering that it's sharing your love on a physical level rather than what is seeing in the movies, and making time for that part of your relationship. But the healthier you are, okay, the more you exercise, because the ability for women to have an orgasm really depends upon the flow to that clitoris. Whereas if you have hypertension, diabetes, all of those are going to have an effect on your ability to have a good physical sexual relationship. So again, taking time, creating the healthiest version of yourself, remembering what sexual wellness is. I tell many women, I said, look, I would be willing to guarantee. And I think the big key, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, is I always ask them, do you enjoy sex once you get started? Most of them go, oh, yeah. So, okay, if you were on a deserted island and give yourself 6 weeks, no kids, no bills, no work, nothing, just you and your partner. After 6 weeks, guess what? Your desire would be back. So I think we have to kind of go back, step back, and look and see, what is it all about? And again, you got to prioritize it. It's got to be on your to-do list.
And one of the things we test for in our clinic is nitric oxide. And this is important for sexual wellness and orgasm. And one of the healthier someone is, the more vegetables they have in their diet, the more they exercise, the higher their nitric oxide levels are, which leads to enjoyment during sex. So this is also something that you can supplement with, but foods high in nitric oxide are beets, beet powder, arugula, celery. And, this is important for energy and cardiovascular health. And also they found that those who had the best recovery from COVID and the least amount of symptoms were those who had higher levels of nitric oxide. So it's important for immunity and hormone production as well. So,
and nitric oxide is a very powerful vasodilator, and our bodies produce it. And one of the best ways, besides the food intake, is exercise. Exercise increases the nitric oxide. Walking outside, the sunlight, increases your nitric oxide. And things that decrease it would be like mouthwash or proton pump inhibitors. Those are 2 big things that can decrease a person's nitric oxide.
Wow. Okay. So even I like the little talk on some supplements here. So it's like we see beet powder different places, like being able to, there's multiple ways to get things in. But what besides eating it? So it's like, what are some of the main supplements, nutrients, like things like that we could easily be adding into our day to day? So like the walking, but then from a nutritional standpoint, it's like throw in some beet powder in your smoothie. Like, what are some other ones?
That
vitamin D.
Yeah, that was a complicated, when we wrote our book on supplements, because again, I think that, you have to look at your genetics, and everyone's genetics are going to be a little bit different on how they're going to utilize or their requirement for supplementation. But if you had it, we kind of looked at what are some of the supplements that we think everybody should. One, vitamin D. Right? We've created a vitamin D epidemic because we live indoors and we wear our sunscreen. So 70% of people are vitamin D deficient. And if mom's deficient, when she breastfeeds, her breast milk is going to be deficient. So we would check everyone's, 15 years ago, we would check everyone's vitamin D level when they came in, and it was shocking. And it really bore out that 70%, about 7 out of 10 women were vitamin D deficient. And that would mean that their babies would come into the world vitamin D deficient. So vitamin D would be, I would say number 1 on the list. Methylated folic acid, about 50% of the population can have a methylation defect. So taking a methylated folic acid is going to be beneficial. You're going to find that in most multivitamins. So I would say a really good well-rounded multivitamin supplement, along with your vitamin D3. A lot of controversy about omega-3, but we give every pregnant woman a prenatal vitamin with DHA for brain development. And, you know, in prehistoric times, omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is 1-to-1. Now it's what? 25 to 1 because of all the processed food.
Because of all the corn oil and the soy in our food and diet.
So I would say a fish oil, a good omega-3, a good multivitamin, your vitamin D. I mean, I could go, there's so many depending upon the stage you're in, and magnesium.
Yeah, magnesium. 80% of people are deficient in magnesium. And I think, again, you're getting more of all of these things, the more plants that you eat, right? But, you know, years ago when she started testing everyone's vitamin D, she'd tell them, just go take a vitamin D supplement, right? And some of them would come back and their level is higher, and some of them would come back and they've been taking it every day and nothing changed. So that's when we realized there is a great difference in quality of supplementation. The FDA doesn't regulate supplements. You can go in your yard, pick out a weed, put it in a capsule and say, take this for blah, blah, blah. So there is a great difference. And so that's part of our reason for writing the book, is to educate people on what really works, because we've seen it. We've seen what works. We've seen what doesn't work. So
can you give me kind of a breakdown? Like, what can someone expect from the book?
Well, it's 40 chapters, 437 pages. So
this is a big book.
Yeah. And
okay,
yes,
I need to add it next to my reading list.
It's
great.
It's practical strategies. And so, you know, we oftentimes, we've got a whole chapter on water, but everybody knows the importance of water. We know we should be drinking water. That's what everybody says. But when you go through that chapter and you realize everything that water does for the body, you sit there, and I watch people, they'll be like reading the water chapter and they're like, or even when I'm talking to them and you just bring up the word water,
like, I want to go read
they want
water.
to grab their water.
It's that reminder. We need reminders.
Yes, learning about the science behind it, though. So then once you learn about the science and you're motivated to do it, we talk about that consistent daily action. So we encourage you to do X, Y, and Z. And then before you know it, it's ingrained in who you are. And so if you think about, like, you know, again, your system, you eat 3 times a day. That's 21 times a week. That's 84 times a month. That's 84 times you're having to make a decision on what to eat. You are bound to mess that up if you don't have a system in place. And so really what we try to do is to help you get systems in place to change your habits over time. And one of the things, if you've listened to us anywhere, I talk about this a lot, but it's so, so important. If you're going to be flying from here, San Antonio, Texas, to Houston, it's a 45-minute flight. If the pilot changes the degree by 1%, right? We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it pretty close, maybe within walking distance. But if we're flying from here to Maui and we change that degree by 1%, we're gonna miss that island and be in an entirely new destination. And that is the power of consistency, changing your habits by even just 1%, but doing it over time. We are the accumulation of our habits. And so we really engage you to reflect on what those habits are, modify them, get a system in place so that you can get the results that you want for a lifetime. There is no quick gimmicks. This is not, we are the antithesis of deprivation and starvation and quick results. We are recruiting people who want lasting change forever.
Yeah. And a joyful life, to have fun. I mean, I always tell my patients, look, we live this. It's not a life of deprivation. I mean, it's a life that, I mean, life is difficult. We all have our struggles. But if I can just say that, if, you know, as you kind of stated with your attitude, life is not really what happens to you. It's how you respond to what life gives you. And we all have that adversity. And when you continue to look for the good, fill your body with what it was meant to eat, and create, like we said in our book, it's really about creating healthy habits and habit stacking. I can give you an example. I will start the day with my quiet time, and then I would do my exercise afterwards. And well, when you're sitting and you wake up and you start your time in the quiet time, who wants to leave that, right? So my exercise would be getting less, and I would do it at night. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get up, I'm going to drink my water, I'm going to exercise, and then do my quiet time. And it really, I was aware, geez, 4 days, and I already changed that habit around because I made it intentional. So it's that intentionality in everything that you do that is going to create that consistency. And that's kind of what we try to put in this book, because, you know, it's not a paleo diet, a keto diet, it's really living life with enjoyment and understanding the beauty of the human body and how it was created and what it can do. And when people would say, geez, I'm getting old. I'm like, well, you know what? That's really a gift. And I would say, when I was 40, I would say, you know what? And then I turned 50, I'd say, enjoy your 40s. Okay. Because when you get to 50, enjoy your 50s. Because when you get to your 60s, well, I haven't made it to the next generation yet. Okay. But I hope I do. But it's really about embracing life, embracing aging. You know, wrinkles are beautiful. I know it's the antithesis in our society. My little grandbaby said, she woke up next to me and she said, Mia, why don't you wear your frownies like mommy? And I said, because wrinkles, I mean, this is what I've been given, right? So I think that our society is all about youth. I was 20 once, I was 30 once. You know, we don't ever think we're going to age. So I think trying to, like we impress in our book, the healthier things you put into your body, the more energy you're going to, you know, obtain as you age.
Yeah. And I think also I would encourage anyone to reverse engineer your life. Okay. Think about your last days. How do you want that to look like? The last 10 years of your life. When you look at the blue zones around the world, they're living well into their hundreds, but they're active until the day that they die. Whereas in our country, it's like from your 40, the doctor's like, your blood pressure is a little elevated. We should watch this. You know, let's keep an eye on your sugars. Let's add a medication. And from 40, it's this gradual decline. And as we get into our older years, we're dependent on other people. And that is not what I want. So our book is called Win the Fat War. It says strengthen your resolve, fight disease, and win the fat war. But that is not our focus. Our focus is really, if you can think about how you want your final days to be and get this system in place, you'll tackle all of those goals. Hopefully, God willing, tragedy aside, right? And you will age gracefully. And they've actually shown that you can actually reverse your biological age. I always say this because there may not be forever I can brag about this, but I'm almost 40 and my biological age is 27. So that's actually,
that's exciting.
That's awesome.
It is.
I was like, thank goodness, because that really goes to show that the things that I'm doing is really benefiting me. And so when you get the goal, the end of life, how you want that to look, and you can connect that back to your daily choices, your systems of what you're doing every day, it really puts it into perspective. I can't eat that cookie. It's not, I can eat that cookie, but it's not about fitting into my pants. It's about how I want to feel, feeling vital and vibrant and having more energy and sleeping more sound and being able to be present with my loved ones and not dealing about my pain or my sadness. And those things may come anyway, but we will have tools to deal with them.
And I think to add on to that, you know, being an obesity medicine specialist, that, you know, there is a place for medication in weight loss, but I think we've lost the focus, like with the semaglutides. It's changing the world for so many people. But statistics are showing that about 80% of people are going to gain their weight back if they don't connect the dots between how they're living and what the medication does. So those 20% that connect the dots, they maintain that weight loss and their life is forever changed. But if you don't connect the dots between how you're living your life and what you're putting in the body with the medication, you're going to be in the same place that you were when you started.
And I think even at some point from a mental perspective, even worse for a lot.
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
it's that shaming and beating yourself up and, you know, why can't I? If you don't change your behaviors.
Right.
Yeah. And then you think, well, I only achieve those results because of the medication. I can't do it without the medication. And, you know, even when you lose weight rapidly anyway, I mean, if you look at the history of diets, we've done some crazy, ridiculous things over time. Yeah. So it's nuts. And so what you find is that when you have that quick, rapid weight loss, you're not maintaining a healthy body composition. You're losing muscle. You're losing that good, healthy water that we need. You're flooding that out. We need to maintain that muscle. What we want to lose is fat, because that fat is the inflammation. So there's a right way and there's a wrong way to lose weight. And we can measure that here in our clinic, and we see it all the time. So if we see something not moving the right way, we have to go, okay, let's talk about your habits. What's going on? And then when we get that sorted, things start moving in the right direction.
But this is fantastic. I know I've kept y'all way longer than we intended, but this is like so fantastic. I can't wait to share this book. I can't wait to read it, because like I said, y'all are right on my wavelengths on talking about like just overall how to live healthier, just happy from the very beginning of the conversation. You're just like, okay, living healthy and wealthy. I developed a course, and that's what I called it, because I'm like, wealth is way more than money. Yes, it's called living healthy, living wealthy. And because wealth is our relationships, it's how we function on a daily basis. It's not just about money. And it's like, it really means nothing if we are not healthy.
Exactly.
I have in the description, I have your website link in there, but is there a way that people can connect with you beyond just being in San Antonio, with like within your own geographical location? Like, how does that work? What do y'all do?
So we are right in the process of developing a new website, but we do virtual visits. We have a virtual lifestyle program that's where you connect daily with Katie. It's an intensified lifestyle program where, look how long, we haven't even been talking that long, and we've only there's so much to talk about, right? About how to live that life. So our 12-week virtual lifestyle program is very intensified, kind of takes our book to a different level, where you can connect one-on-one with the two of us.
And then if anyone wants to inquire, you can text this number if you just have questions. It's 210-361-8740, and that's a text.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to put that in the description for everyone to be able to know. And will they be getting one of y'all, or will they be getting an assistant?
I'm the one who answers those messages.
That's awesome. So you can get Katie. That way I can talk to Katie directly herself. Well, I love that. If there's where can we find the book? Where is it sold at?
It's on Amazon, and all you have to do is put in Katie Clayton to Finding Healthy, and you'll find it.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, I'm going to add that in.
We love your platform. We love what you do for women. You are obviously living it, and you're such an inspiration to women out there. So
keep it up.
Thank you. Mwah, mwah.
I feel the same way about y'all. It's so nice to connect with like-minded women, and I think more women need that.
Absolutely.
You're not alone. Everybody may not be supportive about what you're doing or where you want to go with your life, and that's okay.
Right. Absolutely.
It's okay to be different.
Yeah.
Diversity is what makes us special, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you both so very much. I appreciate it.
Well, take care, Sasha. Nice talking. Bye-bye.
Bye.